In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front wheel bearing and hub on this Ford Escape. Let's get into it. We're going to remove the lug nuts, use a 19mm socket. And remove the wheel. We're going to remove the caliper and the bracket together. Take these two bolts off. Use an 18mm socket. Now grab the caliper and bracket. We're going to use a brake caliper hanger, and then we'll hang it from the coil spring out of the way. Now I'll remove the rotor. I'm going to use a 32mm socket. Take this nut off. Disconnect the connector for the wheel speed sensor. Push down on the tab and it slides up. Set that aside. Using a T25 socket, I'm going to take that screw out. Take that screw out. Using some pliers, carefully grab the sensor. You may have to rock it back and forth a little bit. And slide it out. Remove the shield. We're going to take these bolts out. Use a 10mm socket. Take those out. Slide the shield off. Using a 18mm socket, we're going to take this nut off and a 15mm wrench to hold the bolt from spinning. Take that ball joint bolt out. They make a special tool that you can use to pry down the lower control arm, or what you could do is use a exhaust hanger. Put this on here. Take your pry bar and just pry this down. You can also take a hammer or like a rubber mallet and just hammer it down just so you can separate the ball joint from the knuckle. Now we're going to pull the axle out of the knuckle and just set that aside. Now I'm going to use some side cutters. Take the cotter pin out. Slide that out. Using a 17mm socket, take this nut off. There's different front end tools you can use to separate the tie rod end stud from the knuckle. Or you can just take a punch, just give it a tap, pop that off, out of the way, and just twist the knuckle. We're going to take this bolt out. Use a 15mm socket. That out. The knuckle should come down. You can use a rubber mallet. Just give it a tap. If you have one of these oval shaped bits, you can get in behind here. In the gap. And as you twist it, go widen the knuckle, and then the knuckle slides right off. There you go. You can turn Turn it back the other way, take the bit out. We're gonna set the knuckle up in a press, and with a socket that's the right size for the hub, we're gonna press the hub out. That just popped out. See that separated? And there's the hub. You can see the old race on the hub. We're replacing the hub so we don't have to take that race off. Otherwise, you may have to remove that race. You can either cut it off or use some special tools to try to pull it off. And just using some snap ring pliers, take the snap ring out. You may need to use a prying tool or a straight blade screwdriver. Take that snap ring out. So we flip the knuckle around. I have an adapter underneath that's larger than the size of the bearing. Then we have a smaller adapter, and we're gonna push this through from up top. And that's just gonna push the bearing through the backside. There we go. And press the bearing the rest of the way out. There's the bearing and the knuckle. Now take the knuckle, put it in this position. We want to push the bearing down from the back. And you can see where the tone ring is, or the reluctor wheel. This is a magnet on the back side. You want that up. You don't want to push that down because that's where your ABS is going to read. See, your ABS sensor comes out there. So you want to find a cup that fits exactly on the outside of that because you don't want to be pushing on that. So get that right like that. Very carefully. Start pressing that in. And push that in until it bottoms out. That's good. And you can see where the tone ring is, or the reluctor wheel. And we're going to install the snap ring. We're replacing the snap ring because the old one was pretty rusty and distorted. Just use the snap ring pliers. Just line this up. And you want to line the opening up with the hole right there because that's where the wheel speed sensor is going to go. Just like that. Make sure it's all the way around. You can adjust it a little if you need to. That looks good there. Now we're going to press the hub into the knuckle. This is going to go from the front, just like that. And you need a spacer or adapter that's smaller on the small part of where the bearing is so the center doesn't push out, just like that. Oops. It's going to go through there. And make sure this is centered on the hub. You could also put this in the press if you have a press. There we go. All right, that's all the way down. good. You can see it's not quite flush with the bearing. It's the way it's supposed to be. Looks good. Now we're ready to go install this on the car. I'm just going to take that tool where the strut goes and just twist that. Just like that. It's going to be easier to slip this in. Take the knuckle, slide it onto the strut. There is a tab in the back. You want to get it to line up, pretty much how you took it off. So find that. If you don't have this tool, you can just use a rubber mallet and just try to hammer this up. Take that tool off when it's in the right spot. That looks good. Put the bolt in. Just snug that up for now. We'll torque it later. Twist this. I'm going to pull this out and just slide the axle in. It's lined up. Just pry the control arm down. Get the lower ball joint lined up. All right, that's lined up. Take that clamp off. Put the bolt through. Get that started. Now we'll torque this nut and bolt to 61 foot-pounds. And take the tie rod, line that up with the knuckle, get the nut started. We're going to torque this nut to 35 foot-pounds. Take the cotter pin, slide that through. If the nut doesn't line up with the cotter pin, you want to tighten the nut a little bit more, never loosen it. I'll just bend over the cotter pin and trim the excess. It's okay if it slides around like that. That'll actually keep the rust out. That's good. And we're going to put the wheel speed sensor in, line that up. Put the screw in. And snug that down. While we're here, connect the connector, lock that in place. Put the shield in place. Get the bolts started. Snug those down. Put the axle nut on. Taking a pry bar, I'm just going to go in between the studs just to prevent the wheel bearing from spinning. I'm going to torque this nut to 59 foot-pounds. And then we're going to go an additional 90 degrees. What we can do is just mark the socket if you don't have a torque angle meter. And then just mark where you want that to tighten to. And just go the 90 degrees, and you're good. Now we're going to torque the lower shock bolt. We're going to torque that to 59 foot-pounds. and then you want to go an additional 180 degrees. If you don't have a torque angle meter, just use a crayon and mark the socket, and just go a half turn. And that's good right there. Just take a little anti-seize and just give it a thin coat. Just like that, that's good. Install the rotor. Just gonna put one lug nut on, just so it's easier to install everything, just temporarily. Take the caliper hanger off. Just make sure the hose is not twisted. Slide it over the rotor. Make sure the pads are separated. And put the bolts in. And torque these bolts to 129 foot-pounds. Now install the wheel. Put the lug nuts on. Tighten those down. Now we'll torque the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. Go around again, double check.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.